In this video, I traveled to get a behind-the-scenes look at how the terrain for a huge convention like AdeptiCon gets produced and painted. I'm a huge fan of terrain in wargaming, especially good-looking thematic terrain. It really helps with the immersion in gaming for me. I've been getting into terrain a lot lately, 3D printing it, scratch building it, painting it. I've even started to learn to 3D design in the computer my own terrain for 3D printing. Terrain is awesome, especially when it's good. But have you ever wondered where all the terrain comes from at the big events and tournaments like Las Vegas Open or AdeptiCon or others? Well, as it relates to AdeptiCon, now I can tell you, and tell you why theirs looks so good. If you've ever gone to a big event or a tournament, or seen pictures or footage from those events, then you know how much terrain is needed. Even in a relatively terrain-light game, let's say something like Warhammer 40,000, you're still looking at 8 to 10 pieces per board. Now, if you go to the biggest 40K tournament in the world, the Las Vegas Open, which in early 2025 had over 1,000 players in just that single tournament, not just registered players, but actually like playing in round one, then that means you need 500 plus boards and terrain for each board. It's an incredible amount. The thing that you might not know, however, is that the companies that make the games for these tournaments, they don't build and paint and bring all of the terrain to these events, right? It's the tournament organizers that take care of all that. Now, sure, a big company that produces terrain kits for their game, they might send a ton of free terrain kits to the tournament organizers. Companies like Games Workshop or Atomic Mass Games come to mind, but it's up to the TOs, the tournament organizers, to build it all and paint it all and set it all up and store all of it in the off season. It's a ton of work, and if you've been paying attention over the years, you've probably seen some events out there that don't really spend the time on terrain to make it immersive and satisfying to play on. I've seen photos, which I won't show here. I don't want to put anybody on blast, but I've seen photos from some events where it's just a bunch of kind of unpainted L-shaped ruins, and that can be a bit of a bummer if you've painted up your army to the best of your ability and then traveled to this tournament and got a hotel room and all of that kind of stuff just to play on a half-painted board. But I can guarantee, if you've played in a big event at AdeptiCon, the premier wargaming event in the United States, then you've probably played on some amazing terrain. AdeptiCon takes place in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, usually at the end of March each year, and it's my favorite gaming convention, just full stop. These days, it's up over 10,000 attendees, and a lot of them are there to play games in events. And what I didn't realize was that somewhere around 90% of all the events at the convention are played on AdeptiCon-provided terrain. I wondered, how does all this amazing terrain get made? The sheer number of boards for all the different events and tourneys at the 4 days of AdeptiCon, where does that stuff come from? Well, I had a call with Hank and Matt last month, the main showrunners for AdeptiCon, and I got myself an invite to find out about the process firsthand. And I even got to help with some of the terrain painting. I mean, it was mostly dry brushing duty, but every little bit does help. It was a pretty amazing operation. My trip started with a 4.5-hour drive to Peoria, Illinois on a Friday afternoon. At this point, some folks on the AdeptiCon SPRAY TEAM, which is what the all-volunteer terrain crew is called, some of them had already been there for a day working on projects. People travel from all around to come to these spray team weekends. There was somebody who came from Los Angeles, someone came from Baltimore, I think someone was there from Texas. It's a diverse group of people. These days, most of the people are there to paint and not build. 3D printing takes care of most of the building. Hank told me that he started building tables and terrain back during 3rd edition 40K, and then AdeptiCon started in 2003, just before the release of 4th edition 40K. When AdeptiCon started, the tables were all community provided, and nothing much, ever really matched. There was no consistency. Also, everything back then was built, with the old techniques, stuff like foam core and like pink XPS foam rocks painted gray and stuff like that. I didn't start attending Adepticon until 2010, so I remember things looking, starting to look a little bit better. But if you've been attending for a while now, like I have, you've seen even more improvements. These days, the terrain you see on most of the boards at Adepticon is a mix of 3D printed terrain and official kits from manufacturers, again, if the manufacturers want to provide it. The real shift to modernization of the terrain at Adepticon started in 2018 and started by trying to resin print the terrain, needed for the boards. This certainly made some very nice looking pieces, but it was really difficult to do at scale. They started trying a few different filament printers from a few different manufacturers after that, but they really started cooking with gas when the Bamboo Lab printers started coming out. Today, the main Adepticon printer farm is 7 Bamboo Lab machines, mostly X1 carbon printers, but they also have a new H2D and also a trusty old A1 like mine. They're all fed by these huge, like 5-kilogram spools. I didn't even know they made spools that big for 3D printer filament stuff. I've only ever, bought the 1 kilo spools. And they run pretty much constantly, monitored by Hank and his sons. However, there's also other volunteers outside of the printer farm who produce terrain, to bring to the spray team events and stuff like that. So Hank said that in 2025, they created over 3,000 pieces of terrain and are on track to produce even more in 2026. So once you have all this, printed or built terrain, well, then what comes next? Well, you have to prime it, and they pretty much prime everything in black with rattle cans. This is exactly what I do at home with my terrain, so I feel pretty vindicated. The stuff is sprayed in a heated tent set up next to the very large garage that the spray team works in, and the pieces, once they're sprayed, off-gas out there before eventually being brought in to sit on shelving units to wait their turn to get painted. You'll find stuff from nearly every genre on those shelves, from like primed to like in progress to finished. The main activity area of the spray team is inside the 1,200 square foot heated garage, and it's where the magic happens. There's a huge air compressor out in the spray tent that feeds the airbrush hoses in the garage, throughout the whole setup and everything like that, and there's a lot of Badger airbrushes on hand for terrain work. They're not, called the spray team for nothing. The thing that's interesting about the spray team folks themselves is that while I was there that weekend, there were multiple Golden Demon winners sitting at those tables, just happily painting away at 3D printed terrain. Much of the work is done in like assembly line style, of course. Base coating over the primer generally starts with an airbrush, right? And then there's sometimes some cleanup for overspray and stuff. And then there's dry brushing in, multiple layers, again, depending on the project. And then finally, details get painted in. The color recipes are all tracked photographically so that everyone knows like what's what. The photos are shared in a message group so they all can be found very easily for the next spray team meetup. These days, they meet 5 to 6 weekends a year to get the terrain needed. Once finished, everything is sprayed with a rattle can, like clear varnish to help protect the paint jobs from the rigors of tournament play. The fact that this terrain is generally all either plastic kits or 3D printed in PLA also helps to keep it in good shape for longer. Foam is neat, but it's pretty fragile. You'll see this terrain on the 40K tables, Age of Sigmar tables, Horus Heresy, Kill Team, the Old World, Star Wars Legion, Star Wars Shatterpoint, Marvel Crisis Protocol, Moonstone, War Machine, and many other tables if you walk around AdeptiCon this year. I was only able to stay for half of Friday and half of Saturday, but most of the folks that volunteer are there from like Thursday until Monday morning, painting, talking, laughing, eating snacks, and watching 80s and 90s sci-fi movies. The thing that strikes me is the incredible amount of care that goes into it all. Like I said, there are a lot of Golden Demon and Crystal Brush winners at these tables, painting shrubs and ruins and weird little scatter terrain things. The stuff all looks amazing, and it helps to make every player's gaming experience at every one of these tables memorable. So if you've ever looked at all of that terrain at Adepticon and wondered, where does it all come from? Well, now you know. It's mostly provided by the talented volunteers on the AdeptiCon SPRAY team, folks committed to making the best tournament terrain in the world. I had a great time visiting and appreciate the invite to come and learn more about it. Did you realize that tournaments take this much work? Have you ever played on any of the AdeptiCon terrain? What did you think about it? Let us all know down in the comments below. And while you're down there, some depressmentation to the like button would be greatly appreciated by me. It gets more people to learn about what it takes to run a tournament and how awesome AdeptiCon is, and it's my favorite show and the whole deal. And also while you're down there, there's a subscribe button. You could hit that to find out more videos from me every single week. It's free. Thanks for watching.